My mother woke up in the middle of the night with the sound of a pot being thrown at her door and then hitting the floor with all its force.
First story. That thing was in my room.
In 2009, something inexplicable happened to me as I returned from work. My sister, unable to enter the house due to not having the key, claimed to have heard sounds inside. She said she called several times but received no response. Describing hearing footsteps and running inside, the situation quickly became disturbing. The house, made of wood with a raised floor, created an environment where any additional weight would produce noticeable sounds, especially if someone was running. Initially, I thought my sister was exaggerating, but as soon as she mentioned the sounds, we both heard running, and the dogs started barking frantically towards the house. It's worth noting that the house had two doors, the front one locked, and I was at the back door talking to my sister. The windows were high, and I carefully checked them as I circled the house, confirming they were locked. In 2009, something inexplicable happened to me as I returned from work. My sister, unable to enter the house due to not having the key, claimed to have heard sounds inside. She said she called several times, but received no response. Describing hearing footsteps and running inside, the situation quickly became disturbing. The house, made of wood with a raised floor, created an environment where any additional weight would produce noticeable sounds, especially if someone was running. Initially, I thought my sister was exaggerating, but as soon as she mentioned the sounds, we both heard running and the dogs started barking frantically towards the house. It's worth noting that the house had two doors, the front one locked, and I was at the back door talking to my sister. The windows were high and I carefully checked them as I circled the house, confirming they were locked. Summoning courage, I unlocked the door and entered. However, the atmosphere was heavy, as if an invisible force oppressed the air. The feeling was suffocating, making breathing difficult. For the first time, I understood the expression heavy air they talk about on TV shows. It wasn't a common fear, but a palpable resistance that made it challenging to advance. Despite it still being early, the interior of the house was shrouded in darkness. I checked every corner, under furniture, in the cabinets, verified the window locks, and found nothing. Only two things caught my attention: my computer chair out of place and the key to my room swinging, as if someone had passed by. When I returned to talk to my sister, a glass slid off the sink, shattering on the floor. A chill ran down my spine, and I froze, unsure how to react. After about 10 seconds staring at the broken glass on the floor, my room door slammed shut with tremendous force, despite all the windows being closed. I had never run faster than at that moment, and stepping outside the house, I felt an immediate sense of relief. After a few frightened minutes, we returned, and everything was normal. The oppressive feeling had vanished, the chair was back in its place, and my mother, who usually arrived by 6:30 p.m, came after 8 p.m. She explained that she had been invited by a colleague to participate in a ritual at a house of worship, coinciding with the time of the inexplicable events. I chose not to tell my mother, fearing a strong religious reaction. These seemingly small events left me disturbed for a long period at that time.
Second story.
The spirit of the former resident is still in this house.
When I was a child in the 90s, I lived in this house for just over a month. Now it looks much better, all painted in white with landscaping in the front. When we moved there, the house was beige, the walls were brown, and it was practically falling apart. However, it was the only option my dad could find to rent because he had gotten a job urgently in this city. I remember the inside had very old wooden floors. The doors were huge and tall. The kitchen had a farmhouse look with no cabinets and pots hanging around. But it was dark and quite old. There was a basement accessible from the outside, and you could see one of those small basement windows in the front of the house. The whole house had an unpleasant smell inside, but I was just a child and didn't mind. I just wanted to play, spread my toys all over the house, except in one of the rooms that was always locked, and we were never given the key. After a few days of living there, my parents started to wonder what was in the basement. They ended up breaking the little door, and among various old things, wood, old doors, bricks, and a lot of dust, they also found some old handcuffs with chains. I sensed tension between my parents and naively thought, has someone been arrested here before? But that was not discussed further at the time. What happened next is as I remember it happening. It's been many years, and I don't remember everything vividly. We heard footsteps every night, both inside and outside the house. Outside, it sounded like someone walking in shoes. Inside, there were footsteps and creaks on the wood. When we went to check, there was nothing. I vividly remember the knock, 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 knock. The doors opened all the time, creaking. This included wardrobe doors, too. We heard the sound of furniture being dragged on the wood. And the pots, they fell every night. Lids of pots that were on the shelves, too. Sounds of plates falling and breaking. But when my mom checked, everything was in its place, intact. All of us in the house heard these things. I remember that during the day, everything was normal, but I hated when night came. I was scared to death. However, on one of those nights, the breaking point happened. My mother woke up in the middle of the night with the sound of a pot being thrown at her door and then hitting the floor with all its force. When she got up scared, she says she saw one of her pots on the floor in the living room, still trembling from the impact. After that, everything started to intensify, and in the following days, we began to see shadows and hear voices. Since my dad worked in shifts, he wasn't there to witness this event. A few weeks passed, and my mother simply stopped sleeping, staying awake day and night because of it. One day, while walking on the street, a neighbor stopped us and said, "How do you have the courage to live there?" Someone passed away inside with a gunshot to the mouth. A few more weeks passed, and finally, my dad found another house for us to move out. On moving day, he broke the door that was always locked, and there was a faint and faded blood stain on the wall. They tried to clean it, but it wouldn't come out at all.
Thank you for watching, and to not miss any more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. It encourages me to bring more videos to you. Take care.